Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy, sell any shares, products or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. And my guest today is the CEO of a uranium exploration company, Cosa Resources, Mr. Keith Bodnarchuk. Keith, thank you very much for joining me today.
Great to be back on here, Lucian.
I always enjoy our sessions, and today we will do the same. We will talk a lot about Cosa, especially the recent news. Actually, primarily why I brought you here is the summer drilling program for the Murphy Lake North, which you, I believe, announced 2 days ago on Tuesday. The Murphy Lake North 3,000-meter drilling program targets the hurricane and the cyclone trends with 7 to 8 drilled holes. My first question about this is what specific geological indicators from the winter 2025 drilling program make these trends high priority targets?
Yeah, certainly. So, you know what? Obviously, it's the most exciting time of year for us to get drilling. You know, for a company of ours like us, we're a uranium exploration company. So obviously, drilling is our biggest catalyst. So first, we're extremely excited to get back to the field and get drilling. And so geologically, so the hurricane trend, obviously, it references the hurricane deposit, which is a long trend of our Murphy Lake North project. Hurricane deposit is obviously the highest grade indicated uranium deposit in the world. And, you know, we have a trend that continues on to our Murphy Lake North project. Reminder, our group is very familiar with the hurricane deposit, having found it during our time at ISO Energy. So we drilled in that area in the winter of 2025, and with our fourth hole, which is our final hole of the program, we started to intersect certain indicators of what we look for, which suggests that it's, you know, a significant trend and it justifies more drill meters following up that drill hole. We hit significant alteration in the sandstone, and these unconformity uranium deposits, which you look for in that area, they're often associated with large alteration halos. And so, you know, we've tapped into something that looks significant, and we'll be following that up with our initial holes. And at the same time, we're also going to be testing that parallel cyclone trend. And so the cyclone trend is parallel to the hurricane trend. It's had limited testing in the past. We have over 5 kilometers of really untested trend there. And, you know, importantly, like just for scale, you know, the main part of the hurricane deposit is about 120 meters long. So, you know, having a 5 kilometer area is significant, and there's a lot of space there. And when you take a step back and you look at that cyclone trend, you know, it's under about 200 to 250 meters of cover, which is very shallow for the Athabasca Basin to be exploring. It's had no drill testing, and it's, you know, parallel to the highest grade indicated uranium resource in the world, and it hasn't seen really any drill holes. Trends like that just don't really exist anymore in that part of the world. And so that's why we're eager to get there and test both the cyclone trend and the hurricane trend with these 3,000 meters, which importantly is the largest, you know, drill program that's ever been completed on this Murphy Lake North project.
Yeah, just like you said, it is the largest drilling campaign to date on Murphy Lake. What's driving the decision to scale up now, and how do you balance risk versus reward in this joint venture with Denison?
Yeah, definitely. And so, you know, that's been a lot of discussions with Denison Mines, who is obviously our joint venture partner on the project. They put up their hand to maintain their 30% interest in the project, so they will be funding a portion of this drill program. And, you know, it's time to really start actively exploring this project. We had a significant result in the winter drilling, and now we got to put our money to work and really drill as much as we can to follow up those results, plus also test that cyclone trend, right? That's the reason why we're an exploration company, right? Is to drill as much as we can and get as many tests as we can along these significant trends. And we're going to have a good opportunity this season with, like I said, those 7 to 8 drill holes. That's a significant amount of holes and meters in that part of the world. And so I think, you know, it's really a joint decision between our groups. We were excited by our initial results, and now we want to get back there and take as many attempts as we can at it to hopefully ultimately hit something of significance.
Do you need to obtain any other permits, or you have all in your hand?
Yeah, no, we have all our required permits for this upcoming program.
Okay. The news release mentions the potential delays due to fires. What contingency plans are in place to ensure the program stays on track, and how might delays impact your actually 2025 exploration timeline?
Yeah, so obviously the fires have affected parts of Saskatchewan, and it's good to see that a lot of that is being resolved, over the past couple weeks. But really, like where our project is, there's no current fires in that area, so it's not affecting where we're going to be drilling. It's really just the highway leading up to the site, but that's everybody has returned to their homes, and so that highway is open again, so that we don't foresee any issues with that. But we continue to monitor the situation for sure. And our thoughts go out to those that obviously were affected by those fires, but we don't foresee it as being an issue for us.
Sure, Keith. If I remember correctly, you intersected broad zones of hydrothermal alteration in winter 2025. Can you quantify the extent of these zones and explain how they correlate with potential uranium mineralization?
Definitely. So I think a good way to think about it is, say, a uranium deposit. Take Phoenix, for example. Obviously, with Denison Mines being top of mind, Phoenix, the main part of the ore body is about, say, 250 meters long. But in order to form that ore body, you have a lot of fluid flow happening in that area. And what happens is, in and around that main ore body, the fluid will really start to alter or change the sandstone in and around that. And that alteration halo, might be, say, a kilometer long. So it's much larger than the actual uranium deposit itself. And so what usually happens is when you ultimately find a uranium deposit is you hit that alteration zone first. You start to vector towards you think the best area would be, and you hit that with a significant amount of drilling. And so what we saw with our fourth hole was what looked to be an interesting alteration halo, which could potentially be hosting a uranium deposit along that trend. And the only way to find that out would be to follow it up and drill, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. So it's really just a matter of different scales, right? If, like I said, the deposit itself is quite small, very high grade, but in and around that you might have that larger alteration halo, and so you look for that because you ultimately hit that first before honing in on a potential uranium deposit, and hopefully that alteration halo is hosting uranium deposit, and that's why you drill and follow it up.
Yeah, however, this is a big area. Let's say the cyclone trend includes over 5 kilometers of untested conductive strike. How are you prioritizing drill targets within this large area, and what role do geophysical surveys play in those?
Yeah, definitely. So when we took over the project from Denison, they'd done some pretty good geophysical work on it, and really have actually developed some fantastic targets that they didn't get around to drilling themselves. And so there are good what we call EM picks along that cyclone trend, electromagnetic survey, which helps map graphitic units, and these graphitic units are often associated with structure, and that structure potentially hosts uranium deposits. And so we have great geophysics targets that's leveraging the Denison survey that was done, and we'll just kind of do a bit of a systematic testing of that cyclone trend. We can interpret areas where the geophysics is producing the best looking target. Potentially we can interpret maybe it's structurally complicated, which is a good thing. I mean, there could be multiple faults coming through that area, and so that's why we target those. That's why we target what we feel are the best geophysical targets along cyclone trend. Hurricane trend, you don't really need to rely on geophysics at this point. We have alteration to follow up, and we have a decent amount of drilling along that trend now that you don't really have to factor in the geophysics as much anymore, because we're more at kind of a smaller scale at this point.
Sure. With Denison Mines as your 30% partner and your largest shareholder, how does their technical expertise or strategic input shape the drilling program at Murphy?
Yeah, definitely. So Chad Sorba has come on as a technical advisor for us. I've known Chad for a long time. I actually worked with him at the Phoenix deposit for years when I worked at Denison Mines. And Chad was part of the discovery team of both Phoenix and Griffin deposits for Denison. And then obviously you factor in from our side, you have Steve and Andy, Justin, that are all part of the Hurricane deposit discovery. So it's really a great room to be in when you're discussing these targets, right? That's a lot of discoveries that these guys have made over the past number of years. So I think it's really just Andy and Chad and the other members of our team really coming together and developing good targets. And just, it's, like I said, it's a great room to be in, and a lot of ideas get tossed around because we've seen a lot of core and we've seen a lot of success. And so, it's a great relationship in that manner. And so they obviously they're part of the targeting process, and we're excited to have them there.
Yeah, just like you said, you worked on Phoenix. You have a career in Denison Mines. So, can you elaborate? Can you tell me the parallels, let's say, between the Phoenix area and the Hurricane deposit area? Is there any chance at all that this could be ISR amenable?
You know what? I think, obviously when you look at the depths of Hurricane deposit and you look at, is that similar high grade unconformity deposit as is Phoenix, there's a lot of parallels you can draw there. But, I think, Denison's gone a lot further down the road of whether Phoenix itself, is amenable to ISR. But you know what, they're looking around at different projects, right? And they're looking to groups like us, to maybe make a discovery and to really feed to their pipeline of where they can apply that technology. The beauty of what they've been able to do there with Denison is that they've really lowered the threshold of what's going to be an economic deposit. If we're drilling at Murphy Lake North, all of a sudden something that would normally be considered smaller deposit all of a sudden becomes economic. And you see them very active in their Waterbury project. Denison is also looking to apply their ISR technology to that project. It's anytime you'd already be able to make a discovery in the basin at this point, you'd want to be looking to Denison to come along and help you move that project along.
Yeah, Denison is the one in the Athabasca. I agree on that. Keith, let's move on your other projects as well. You announced, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago, airborne geophysical surveys at Cosmo and Orion, your other projects. You have engaged the Geotech ZTM system. I believe that is the name for airborne surveys at Cosmo and Orion. Why choose ZTM over other geophysical methods, and what specific conductive features are you targeting here?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, ZTEM has been a very effective tool in the Athabasca Basin over a number of years, and it's been effective for us to use on different projects. So basically, we're just looking to map, like I said, these big, large conductive packages, which are often associated with graphite, which graphite is susceptible to hosting faults because it's a bit of a slippery or weaker unit, and if there's pressure, it tends to break. And you look for these fault zones in order to help your exploration towards hopefully ultimately making a uranium discovery. These fault zones might be tens of kilometers long. Along that fault zone, you look for these large alteration halos, and then within that alteration halo, you hopefully ultimately find a uranium deposit. Cosmo and Orion, are fantastic projects. The thing with us is, right, we're heading out to drill Murphy Lake North right now. The guys have put in the work, both, Andy and obviously getting advice from the Denison side. The guys have put in the work, and we're extremely excited by the targets we have here. But we always make sure we do have that pipeline of good targets. We've always expressed that to the market that, we do want to have those next great targets. And, importantly, right before this drill program is starting, Andy, Steve, and the team are up at Darby looking at old core. Really looking to develop targets for what we'll hopefully get to in early 2026 drill testing there. That old exercise of just pulling apart old boxes, looking at core, has been very effective for us. It's ultimately how, the team found Hurricane during our time at ISO. They just went through old core, found a good looking target, and followed it up and actually hit with the very first hole. So, it's not glamorous work. You're in the bugs, you're dealing with bats and stuff, but these guys put in that work. They pull apart the core, and, we're excited to obviously get to Darby early next year too. So you always see us talk about that pipeline of great looking targets, and we'll continue to build that pipeline to go alongside our drilling at Murphy Lake North.
Yeah, that's very good. Keith, the Cosmos survey aims to identify extensions of the Bell Lake structural corridor. What historical data or regional trends suggest this corridor could host uranium mineralization?
Yeah, so I think, we always, when we kind of explain our approach to how we acquire ground, right? As our chairman, Steve Blower, always says, that locally these deposits are very hard to find, but regionally there is a pattern to them. You look for these long, northeastern corridors or corridors that could potentially host uranium deposits, where you have these string of pearls, like where it maps down from McArthur River, past Wheeler, which hosts Griffin and Phoenix down to Key Lake. And so we got as much ground as we can within these, what we call uranium corridors. And something like Cosmo, it has a bit of a bend, which it looks like in the geology, which, is where, how Hurricane is, right? Hurricane has the bend in the geology along the Rock Lake trend. So we're always looking for analogs to deposits that we've obviously been a part of. And, we managed to acquire Cosmo, for a limited amount by staking it, right? It's probably less than $20,000. And so, we're always looking for these opportunities to go into these unloved, previously overlooked areas based on the knowledge that we know and that we have from our most recent successes. And so Cosmo looks interesting. It looks fantastic. We're excited to update the market on the results of that geophysics survey.
Yeah, and the Orion survey focused on the La Roque trend near the Hurricane deposit. How do the 2023 Mobile MT and 2024 AMT survey results at Orion inform your current ZTM targets?
Yeah, so certainly. So there's a portion of Orion that wasn't really covered with geophysics, and so that's what we're honing in on to make sure we can look at the project from like an entire level. And the Rock Lake trend wraps around and it comes down past Orion, and the Rock Lake trend obviously hosts the Hurricane deposit. And so when we're able to acquire as much ground as we did along that trend, that excites us. And so we do have very, very exciting A&T targets on there. Another, La Roque Lake looking analog or Hurricane looking analog where the geology bends in and around that Orion trend. And it actually continues down to our Ursa project. And so you see there's a theme to the projects we've acquired here. We put ourselves along these massive corridors, which we feel really sets us up best to ultimately make a discovery, is going along these big regional uranium corridors. And so that's why Orion excites us. It's along that main corridor. It seemed very limited drilling, and we know we've really applied modern geophysics to it, which I think has upgraded it significantly.
Yeah, the news release mentions potential basement conductive zones and sandstone-hosted anomalies. What's the ideal geophysical signature you are looking for to prioritize drill targets?
Yeah, definitely. So if you can find that sandstone anomaly with the coincident basement conductor below it, that's describing the scenario that you want to drill, because that sandstone anomaly could potentially be that alteration zone, whereas that conductor below could be that structure that exists within those graphitic units. So I kind of painted a picture in this interview of what we look for, that fault zone in the basement surrounded by that big alteration halo in the sandstone, and within that alteration halo you hopefully find the uranium deposit itself. And so yeah, that's how we look at it from a geophysics approach, is looking for that coincident anomaly where you have, like I said, the sandstone anomaly with the coincident conductor or EM anomaly right below it.
Sure. Keith, can you give me an update on your other projects? What are you currently doing on some of them? Are you doing anything, and what's the plan for 2025?
Yeah, definitely. So we partnered out one of our projects, Astro. It's kind of in the same vicinity of Ursa and Orion, kind of really in that area where it's been somewhat unloved and overlooked parts of the Athabasca Basin, but has a lot of meat left on the bone, as we said, and a lot of great looking regional targets. So we completed airborne geophysics over top of that project, and we look to our partners to continue to advance that into 2026. Yeah, and really, like I said, we have Cosmo, Orion, but really our focus this year, majority of our dollars are going towards drilling. And it's when we built this company, obviously we had to upgrade a lot of targets through systematic geophysics. You really put a lot of capital to work to really upgrade our projects. And so now that we've acquired these ones from Denison, which we like to call our discovery ready, because they have a decent amount of drilling that really paints a picture and really helps guide us for these walk-up drill targets. Our capital is going towards drilling, because that's the biggest catalyst for a company like us. This Murphy Lake North program won't cost us that much. It's very shallow targets. We obviously have Denison maintaining their 30% portion. Then we have a pretty healthy treasury in the sense that we can go and drill next year too at a Darby, or follow up exciting results at Murphy Lake North, and still be funded for that.
Yeah, you have enough money in the till, I believe you raised recently, so you are fully covered for this year. And what is actually the budget and the overall exploration budget for 2025?
Yeah, so majority of our budget, so the total budget will be less than $3 million, probably even less than $2.5 million. About two of that is going towards Murphy Lake North. If you factor in Denison's portion, we're paying about $1.5 million towards that. So to do these 8 holes, which is very cost effective exploration. Especially in today's world where you're obviously battling with inflation and costs have gone up. We're still efficient as you can be, and that's really a product of Andy. Focusing on keeping our costs down as much as we can. It's not the largest exploration, but it was very, very impactful, and it's really a result of us, doing a good job of really upgrading our pipeline of projects and balancing, great drill targets with cost-effective exploration. Yeah, we'll have enough to complete all exploration for 2025 and then carry us into 2026 first part to do drilling there too. So we're in good shape that way.
Understood. What about Keith? You did this transaction with the Denison. Okay. What is your M&A approach going forward? Will you be sharply focused on these exploration programs, or you are still looking at other potential targets to acquire additional ground, to stake more ground, to buy other projects, maybe companies? What's the plan here?
Yeah, so definitely we've always taken that approach at multiple companies where we're always continue to value potential acquisitions in the Athabasca Basin and really look to upgrade our pipeline of drill targets. We obviously this Denison transaction, we got fantastic projects. Those are our focus, but we'll always continue to look at cost-effective opportunities. I think 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 projects we feel very good about those, and I'm pretty proud of what the team has done over the past couple of years to put together as good a land package as we have. But you always have to be looking at opportunities, I think, and you always have to be active because you never know if something might come up from even from a different company here and there, and we have to be ready if we think it makes sense to bolt it onto our current land package. Yeah.
Sure. Since you have a lot of projects in the pipeline, have you ever considered the prospect generator model?
You know what? Every time we acquire a project, it has been with the intention of us exploring it, and we feel that we could potentially make a discovery on there. When we do transactions like we did with Denison, where we really upgrade our exploration pipeline, and we know that we won't get around to exploring one of these projects, then we'd look to do a transaction, like we recently did, where we wanted to see that project get worked, by a great group like Global. And so I don't think we'd ever pivot to the prospective generator model. I want our guys focused on ultimately making that discovery. It has been effective for other groups, but our intention is when we acquire something is that we're going to head out and try and make a discovery on that project. If we can't get around to it, then we'll try and realize value through some other means.
Fair enough. Keith, final question. News flow from the company. What can investors expect in the upcoming period?
Yeah, as I said at the start of the interview, this is the most exciting time of year for us. The drill will be turning here shortly. Biggest catalyst for a company like us. So we'll be updating the market when we officially commence drilling. We'll obviously provide results throughout the next couple months based on the drilling. We'll obviously have geophysics results at our Cosmo and Orion projects. We'll also have geophysics results from our Astro project with our partner Global. And we will update the market too, like on the potential targets at Darby. Like the guys went in there, relogged some core, and we're pretty excited by what we're seeing at that project. So lots of steady news flow here. Like I said, our team is very excited. They put in the hard work to really develop fantastic drill targets here at Murphy Lake North.
Keith, I wish you luck with the drilling campaign. Go and find uranium, and thank you very much for this interview.
Thanks, Lucian.